Were you surprised that in the announcement over the weekend, the president mentioned other smaller coins like XRP, Solana, and Cardano, as well as Bitcoin for the strategic crypto fund?
I'm not surprised. I mean, there's no way to interpret this other than this is bullish for Bitcoin and is bullish for the entire U.S. crypto industry. You know, there are conservatives that view the right path forward as just a Bitcoin-only policy because Bitcoin is a commodity, an asset without an issuer, a neutral asset, and there's no controversy. But the president's adopted a more liberal economic policy, and that's his right. He's president of the United States. It's going to 20 trillion, then it's going to 200 trillion, then it's growing 20% a year. So what's compelling about it is if the United States takes a position in the emerging crypto economy, if it buys up 10, 20% of the Bitcoin network, we're going to pay off the national debt. And so why wouldn't that be in the interest of the United States?
Today, we have Bitcoin bulls Michael Saylor and Tom Lee giving their Bitcoin and crypto prediction for the coming weeks and what we can expect in 2025. Historically tracking the price in the year following the Bitcoin halving and on the heels of multiple all-time highs, they believe this year will be the beginning of a massive $400 trillion inflow of capital into Bitcoin. The price for Bitcoin currently sits just over $84,100, down over 15% in the past month. And in the coming months, we'll witness one of the biggest price rises so far since the creation of the dominant cryptocurrency. The story will become even bigger in 2025 because of the Bitcoin ETFs, with thousands of institutional investors across the United States now buying Bitcoin. The demand for the leading digital asset has increased exponentially. This has caused a never-before-seen supply-demand imbalance for Bitcoin, and everything is about to change. Let's get right into the latest interview with Michael Saylor and Tom Lee as they give their prediction for Bitcoin and crypto in 2025.
You've met with members of the Trump administration, cabinet, family members, I think the president himself. So are you involved in advising around this strategic crypto reserve?
I've met with a bunch of senators on the Democratic and the Republican side, a bunch of Congress, a few members of the administration. I believe that the best thing for the country is to move forward with an enlightened, progressive policy toward digital assets. I think it's worth $100 trillion to the United States. And ultimately, there's four different assets that people need to come to grips with. A digital commodity like Bitcoin, an asset without an issuer, backed by digital power. A digital currency like a stable coin, backed by a fiat currency equivalent. A digital security, an asset with an issuer backed by a stock or a bond so we can tokenize Wall Street, and then a digital token, which is an asset with an issuer that's backed by digital utility. I think everybody's trying to come to grips with that taxonomy, and as the market gets more educated, we're going to see more progressive, constructive policy engagement. The key to keep in mind is that Bitcoin is not competing with the dollar. It's competing with international real estate, global equities, expensive money managers on Wall Street, and any long-range investment that somebody makes. And so right now we're about $2 trillion in Bitcoin. It's going to 20 trillion, then it's going to 200 trillion, then it's growing 20% a year. And that capital is coming from overseas. It's coming from China, from Russia, from Europe, from Africa, from Asia, from the 20th century to the 21st century. So what's compelling about it is if the United States takes a position in the emerging crypto economy, if it buys up 10, 20% of the Bitcoin network, we're going to pay off the national debt. And so why wouldn't that be in the interest of the United States? I don't think anybody's ever lost money in the Bitcoin network holding 4 years. The United States' best investments are Alaska, Mexico, California, and Louisiana, and Manhattan. We're still holding them hundreds of years later. It's a nation state. So presumably, you want to buy Bitcoin, you want to hold it for 100 years. You know where the future's going. The AIs, the foreigners, the Europeans, the 20th century capitalists, they're all going to cyberspace. And so the United States has the ability to buy this for a nickel and pay off the national debt. It'll be the greatest economic program of the 21st century for this country.
How do you think it gets funded?
I mean, I think that I'd leave that to the president's working group. They'll eventually decide what they want to do and the scale they want to do it. There are a dozen people on it, the head of the Treasury, the SEC, the CFTC, Commerce, the Attorney General. The president, I'm sure, will opine.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll have leadership from Tim Scott and French Hill, both the Republicans and the Democrats. Everybody's going to have their opinions. It's above my pay grade to decide. But if you have a sovereign wealth fund, then I think it's well within the rights of the leader of the nation to decide to put, proprietary assets, securities, tokens, and the like into it. And of course, the decision will eventually be made through a fairly comprehensive political process over the next 6 months. We have till July 22nd, when the digital assets framework and recommendations from the executive order are due on the president's desk. It should be interesting to watch what happens between now and then. Bitcoin's not highly speculative to the 500 million people in the crypto economy. It's the best performing asset in the past 15 years, and generally the best performing asset every single year. My company's gone from a $250 million investment to almost a $50 billion position in 48 months. So clearly, there's enormous economic energy in this asset. It is probably the most certain thing in the financial universe if you have a long time horizon.
Embracing an unyielding enthusiasm for the Bitcoin realm, Saylor and Lee confidently predict that explosive growth is looming on the horizon, as BlackRock and many other crypto giants are doing just that. Lee and Saylor reassure that a long-expected surge awaits. By the end of 2025, there will be 1.1 billion active crypto wallets. The pace of growth is hard to comprehend, and it will be the fastest accumulation of wealth we have ever seen. This is the conclusion of a career's worth of research. And every single chart and piece of research leads to the same conclusion. Liquidity drives everything, and crypto will be the best performing asset of them all.
I would say what's interesting is Bitcoin's not had negative headlines in February, but it was down. But I know our technician, Mark Newton, had talked about this being a cyclical downturn in Bitcoin through the end of March. So he was talking mid-January, getting down to 62. The weekend...
105 to 62. That's just Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's a typical...
Do the math, though. It's like, in a month, 105 to 62.
Yeah, that's a test of the resolve
that
of
hurts
bulls, right?
people that buy at 105.
Yeah, but as you know, Bitcoin makes all of its gains in 10 days. So
Yeah.
if people sort of try to time this, they're going to miss out on a chance for Bitcoin to go back to its highs.
And by the end, at some point in this year, you think it gets, because last year you thought it might get to 150 or even higher, right?
Yeah. I think it's going to do better than 150 this year. I mean, I think technology is still important for the next few years. You know, in our sector weightings this year, it's number 3. So financials, industrials, first and second. But I think it's just digesting a lot of the prodigious gains the last 2 years. But I don't think AI spending is really going to weaken. I know investors have a lot of good news baked in.
So I think the market, if it does resume a move higher, you think it's the same leadership, or there has been some rotation away from some of the Mag 7 and financials have looked strong. I mean, will it look different, or will the winners come back with a vengeance?
Yeah, I mean, in January, the first, let's say, five weeks or so, that leadership was different because it was a lot more tech outside of the Mag 7, and it was financials, and it was some mid and small caps. I think once we're through this rough patch, that's the kind of leadership we think we'll see.
Tom Lee challenges the conventional economic metrics, asserting that these metrics are often manipulated to paint a specific narrative, like labor statistics and inflation figures. The ongoing adoption of Bitcoin by governments, institutions, and media signifies a broader recognition of its value. However, Lee asserts this journey is just the beginning, comparing the initial years to the current widespread interest and investment, with a giant spotlight on Bitcoin ETFs. Lee highlights this being a significant development in the financial ecosystem, selectively measured to create desired effects rather than reflecting the true state of the economy. In this context, Bitcoin emerges as an alternative, detached from the manipulations of the conventional economic sphere. Lee also highlights that established corporations like Apple, Amazon, and Google will use their established relationships acquired over decades to swiftly acquire substantial amounts of Bitcoin through a spot ETF, bypassing the cumbersome processes involved in procuring the actual commodity. This disparity underscores the transformative power of cryptocurrencies in traditional financial institutions. Michael Saylor underscores the importance of embracing digital currencies as the economic landscape is changing rapidly, and urges investors to leverage Bitcoin's potential to secure a more prosperous financial future. What do you think about the latest interview with Tom Lee? And how do you think Bitcoin's trajectory in the coming months will impact the crypto market and the world of investing?